put your hands together and welcome them on stage. Thank you.
Oh, I have already missed it.
There we are. Okay, good. We need to have ourselves on the big picture, otherwise we don't know who we are. I'm Eleanor Thornton-Firkin, aka ETF.
I am Samira Brophy, and we are the Effectiveness Queens. Between us, we have about 55 years of experience advising clients. I'm not going to say who has contributed more to that number. Advising clients on how to make excellent creative. So it is our absolute pleasure to be here with you today to kind of distill some of our learnings, but also share some of Ipsos's super fresh evidence about the power of storytelling, our love letter to the industry. So let's dive in.
Okay, so as is traditional at the beginning, just a little bit of audience participation. I want you to put your hand up if you think there is one and only one way to creative greatness in advertising.
Okay, I see no hands up, which I'm extremely glad about, because that's how we feel as well, because it's such a nuanced and multifaceted way to get to effectiveness. There is no one way. That's what we believe as well.
And it's not just that we feel that, we actually know this. Because in 2022, we did a big meta-analysis of our global database, and out of that, we looked at ways to creative greatness. And what we found is that actually having really high levels of creativity combined with very high levels of empathy and fit with the brand, that's when you turbocharged your business outcomes. So there are these overarching themes, but how you get there, that is entirely up to you. It's up to your brand, it's up to your strategy, it's up to your audience.
That's right, and as you can imagine, our clients were curious. You know, how do we get to great stories? What are the different tactics you can deploy to sit underneath and help us understand what's in our toolkit? So we turned to our good friend AI to give us a little bit of a hand, and thankfully AI is smart enough now to understand things like context. So when we do things like humor or feeling, it can unpack stories with a little bit more granularity than saying, oh, this is funny, there's a joke here. It can actually go deeper. So it really helped us get to the nub of the different stories. And we turned to 15,000 ads in our Ipsos ad testing database, looking across 24 different countries to help us then understand what are the things that make for a great story, because we know stories are important.
And stories are important to us as human beings. That's true from cave paintings to hieroglyphs to art, and ultimately to the more mass media that we now find ourselves living in. And actually, this is the way, through stories, that we've passed on that key important information and indeed bound our culture together.
I think what you're saying, Elena, is that basically stories are the way that we make sense of the world that we live in. I think Joan Didion said it better than I ever will when she said, we tell ourselves stories in order to live. And I think that's very true of life, and so also of advertising. But what is it that makes a great story?
Well, here I think we can turn to popular entertainment. And when we look back on some of these blockbusters, there are three key components to great storytelling. First is about participation. I don't need to tell you every single little minutiae of what's going on. Actually, I need to leave room for you to fill in some of those gaps and to want to fill in some of those gaps. All of these things going on behind me definitely give you that little burst of escapism, pull you out of your everyday life and just give you a little bit of a tingle. And then finally, connection. It's really about having relatable characters whose stories you really want to know. Are they going to get to their goals? Are they going to be able to get to the outcomes? And it's these three elements that, when you bring it together, give you an amazing, effective story.
And making that connection actually goes beyond just advertising. I mean, in real life, making that connections via stories really matters. So in a study where blood pressure patients were introduced to other people's very relatable stories around how they manage their conditions versus a group of other patients who were shown a list of facts and interventions, no guesses. I mean, I think we can all guess like which group of people had made a better job of kind of managing their own conditions. So actually seeing and relating to the stories of other people managing their conditions, which was way more effective to their own outcomes. So stories matter in real life as they do in advertising.
But unfortunately, when we look at the ads that we look at in our database, only half of them contain a relatable story. The other half are that list of facts and figures. There is so much headroom to making great creative and to actually growing your business if we just inject the stories into the ways that you're communicating.
So let's think about effective advertising. It's basically, very simply, needing to do two jobs, right? The first is that it must be encoded in people's memories. So that means people need to be able to actually see you or pay attention and remember who the brand is. And the second job, so let's call that memory encoding. And the second job is that it must elicit a response that helps nudge behavior down a certain direction, or at least allow you to build a relationship with the brand. So let's call that behavior change. So all effective advertising must do memory encoding and behavior change. So let's now look at some of the things that sit behind how to do those things effectively. Let's start with memory encoding. Eleanor, stop the press. Our data shows us that humor drives memorability.
What?
Okay, there is going to be, we're not getting any prizes for telling you this because it's from the Bureau of the Bleeding Obvious. We all know this. It's a deeply kind of well understood fact, but the good thing about the way we can now analyze stories and advertising stories is that we can go below the surface of that to try and understand the context of that humor. And how then do we use humor to drive those outsized memory encoding effects?
So you remember that escapism, which was at the top of the triangle? It's the playful kind of humor that allows you in and allows you to really think about, oh, how could I insert myself into this story? So that's one way of doing it. And then there are all these other factors at play. So there are so many different ways that you could do it for your brand. For some of your brands, which are not serious, you might want to be doing slapstick. It could be really, really funny. For something a little bit more highbrow, maybe a little bit of verbal humor coming through. And obviously, if you are a big bombastic brand, then maybe lots of hyperbole. All of these are ways to telling humor in a great way in your stories.
And so how can you then build on that humor and take it somewhere even more exciting? What we have found in the data is that if you think back to the playful participation that Eleanor talked about, if you layer that on with that sense of escapism, take people out of their everyday lives into somewhere that's more illogical or unexpected, you get almost 3 times the memory encoding effects, which makes perfect sense if you think about it. You've basically given people something to emote, like a sense of joy, but you've also given them a hook to hang their hats on.
Okay, so the eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed quite a lot of unicorns in our presentation. You're probably going, what, why? Well, this ad is why.
Your dad's at the glue factory. My name's Kaylee, and I'm a unicorn tier farmer for Iron Brew Extra's new legendary flavours. We practice traditional techniques here to get the tears flowing. There's your classic slagging. You're just a trumped-up horse with a horn. No one believes in you, and your teeth are massive. But we also collect tears of joy here. You could do a shampoo ad with that. Everyone wants to ride you. Your horn's looking big. And when all else fails, we bring out the tearjerkers. Titanic, classic. That's it, Jack. Down you go. No room for you. Delicious. Tastes like rainbows and joy. We Stardust is one of our best at greeting. Get it out, you big pink donkey.
Do you have a little sit down in the middle?
Oh, well, you know,
Yeah.
I'm old.
Fair enough.
Allegedly.
So what the data showed us is that there is effectiveness, and there's a lot of sense in nonsense. So giving people the humor with that sense of escapism by layering on the illogical and the unexpected is a great way of driving up memory and coding effects. But what other ways of escapism are available to us?
So, you know those really great comedians who are giving you a slice of life, walking down a road, and then suddenly they just knock that 90 degrees. Well, these are the kind of things that really make memorable stories. So that twist ending, the misdirection that could come about. And all of these are ways just to add a little bit of pizzazz to your narratives and make them much more memorable.
Mm-hmm. Shall we wrap up the memory and coding session, this chapter, by watching another ad, shall we?
I think so.
Okay.
This is one of my all-time favorite illogical ads from the old days, but still a very good example.
Can I see your papers, please?
Really happening to me? Everybody else seems to know.
Mind stepping out of the car, sir?
Can be. Why can't you
Could you open the trunk, please?
like you one time?
Have a good day, gentlemen.
Maybe you could tell me.
You know what I really love about this ad?
What, Sam? What do you love? What do you really, really love?
I really, really love that this is an ad that's basically about having really sharp creases in your clothes, but it's so mad. Which brings me neatly on to our next section, which is about driving behavior change. What the data shows us is that ads that talk about the value that their brand can deliver, so what it is that you are doing in people's lives, your brand value, that can change behavior. And when I say brand value, I mean functional features, USPs, and product demos.
What?
Yeah.
You can tell people what your brand actually does?
Yes, people, it is okay to say what your brand actually does. It's all right. But, and there's a very big but, and I don't mean ETFs or mine, if you can couch that brand value in a really excellent narrative, that is when you start to get twice as much behavior change effects. So yes, have really compelling features, but wrap that up in a story and dramatize the shit out of it, just like Flat Eric in the Levi's ad over there. That's where you start to get those really big outsized effects. And what we've seen in terms of the narrative that you couch that brand value in, of the different flavors of storytelling, what we've seen is that the most important thing is to tell a relatable story. So something that people can actually connect with. So coming back to the three things, participation, escapism, now we're talking about connection. Allow people to connect with you. It's that two-way conversation between the brand and the audience that needs to take place. They need to intuitively go, this is brand so-and-so, and also see themselves in the creative that you make. So relatable stories are the most important feature in terms of driving effective behavior change. And in fact, 5 times more effective at driving behavior change than just emotion alone. I think it's well established that emotion is incredibly important in advertising. We all know this. But in terms of how we frame our ambition, we think that, the idea of kind of raising a smile, for example, is actually, it's more limiting than freeing. Thinking about how to create a really relatable story where you can build that really intuitive and rapid two-way connection between brand and audience is a much more ambitious framework in which to think about your next strategic brief and your next amazing campaign platform.
And digging back into my bag of ancient advertising, this for me is an amazing example of a really, truly relatable story. So relatable, in fact, that those of you, particularly parents, will still be able to recognize this story now in 2026. So let's give that a play.
Let's roll it.
What's that?
Yes, it is a surprise. No, I haven't cooked it before. Yes, it is foreign. No, Jason, it's not a hamburger. Yes, Alice and Dolly will love it. No, Nick, no garlic. And Michael. Remember Preston?
Sorry, it makes you laugh every time. Right, okay, so those are what we've demonstrated. Let's just give ourselves a little bit of a recap of what we've talked about today. Humour is a really brilliant way into participation. If you then layer on illogical and unexpected narrative arcs, then you get that escapism. I can't even say that. It's escaped me. Escapism. And bring those two things together gives you 3 times as much memory encoding as without it.
And then obviously you must kind of think about the compelling way that you are going to fit into your consumers' lives, and then make sure you do that in as dramatic a way as possible. Find the narrative that they can relate to, and if you can create that really intuitive two-way connection between brand and audience, that empathy and brand fit criteria, that is when you start to get twice as much behavior change out of your creative. So,
our call to action from you leaving this room is to really think about that extra 50% where we can insert narratives, where we can really get people to remember it, and ultimately to grow your brands much more quickly.
We are going to put up the QR code on the screen, so if you would like to download the research, there's lots of brilliant evidence that we haven't been able to go into today, so if you wanted to have a look, please feel free. It's called Misfit Stories. And I think we have a bit of time, so if we can take a few questions today, if that's okay with you.
Does anybody have?
Hello, has anybody got any questions for these 2 brain boxes? I think you've gone all quiet on us. That's unusual. Ah, someone's got their hand up there. Hi. How would you do escapism
For a B2B marketplace? We have seen some brilliant B2B ads, actually, haven't we? There was one that involved giant I think it was Xero, one of the accounting firms, that had like giant chickens having a really terrible day. B2B marketers are still humans, so we feel like there's a lot of headroom in that space to be fairly creative. You're still kind of talking to the human. As long as you kind of have that very compelling proposition, and you have dramatized it, the sky's the limit. There's no need for B2B marketing to be dull.
Absolutely. I think you do just need to make sure that you're really thinking about your brand values, though, because obviously if you're a very, very serious brand, it's going to be a lot harder to do that. But there is mostly room to do that anywhere for anything.
Yes, I have seen some very alarming B2B marketing that went down a very, I guess, a little bit too much into the illogical space, where there was, I cannot remember the company now, but it was a sort of very muscly man, literally breastfeeding an office worker, and it had something to do with printing and stationery. It was truly bizarre. So maybe don't.
Are you sure that wasn't an episode of Little Britain?
I'm very sure.
Maybe she ate too much cheese. Yes, illogical for a purpose, not illogical just for the sake of it.
If you add me on LinkedIn, I promise I will find you that ad and send it to you. It will make your year.
Excellent.